Hi, I'm David Laurie, and I'm here to talk about my intervention project. For my intervention, I chose to write a story as a way of engaging readers with environmental issues. Storytelling is the way we get past people's resistance to sensitive or political subjects, and we stir their souls directly. You may not care very much that forests somewhere else are being cut down, but if you see how it affects a character you care about, well, that can make the issue a lot more personal and less abstract. That's why we have children's movies like Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest in 1992, which got children passionate about green justice and conserving the rainforest. That's why we have movies like Medicine Man, also 1992, which was written for adults and inspired them to think about the human cost of deforestation. And maybe you saw Wally when it came out back in 2008. The big daddy of them all, of course, is Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. That was published in 1971. It's been turned into a TV special, been turned into a movie, and it's pretty much provided the iconic character for the environment. And that little brown fuzzy guy pops out of the tree and speaks for the trees. So if you really want to change people's minds and have them thinking about what you said days, weeks, or even thousands of years later, you don't just load them down with facts and figures and good arguments. You tell them a story that they'll remember. Even better, you take a story that they think they know and reinterpret it in a new way. I don't know if I have a good story, but I did my best. I decided when the retail Shel Silverstein's classic children's story, The Giving Tree. If you've never read it before, The Giving Tree is the story of a little boy who's friends with a tree. They play together. She gives him apples when he's hungry. He sleeps in her shade when he's tired. And everything's good. But as he gets older, he starts looking for happiness elsewhere and demands that the tree give him more and more to make him happy. He takes her apples and sells them to get money to buy things to make himself happy. He cuts off her branches and builds a house to make himself happy. And finally, in his middle age, he cuts down the trunk, makes it the boat, and sails away so he can be happy. In the end, he comes back an old, sad, wiser man and finds that all he really needed was the tree, and all that's left is her stump. Now, the way Silverstein tells it, The Giving Tree is a coded story about appreciating your mother. But by using the tree for the basis of that metaphor, he also suggests environmental reading. Could be your Mother Earth, could be the forests. I decided I wanted to build on this, so I asked myself, what if the tree the boy plays with is actually a dryad? Dryads are from Greek mythology. They're spirits who look mostly human, but they inhabit individual trees. In my mind, it was a perfect fit to make explicit an environmental message. My story is about 10,000 words long, and it's aimed at teens and young adults. It tells the story of an old man named Sheldon who's on his way back to a favorite chocolate spot in the woods. When he was little, he met a young woman there named Poem. Over the summer, the two of them became friends, and she not only played with him, she fed him apples from a tree she kept, would make him crowns from the tree's leaves and branches so he could be king of the forest, and she taught him to appreciate the interconnectedness of the forest. Now, the chief goal of the story is education. I'm hoping that by making the encounter wondrous and strange, that it's the reader who will understand Poem's lesson, which mirrors a lot of indigenous thinking about the environment. Poem tries to teach Sheldon about the interconnectedness of the forest and how the movement of people through the forest as they hunt, fell trees for shelter or firewood, build abandoned settlements, all leaves a mark that the forest remembers thousands of years later. Sheldon also teaches them things like caring for the environment, feeding, making sure the tree is cared for, making sure the tree is respected, asking the tree before you take its fruit. These are things the Greeks would have imagined literally. Here I'm thinking more symbolically. You respect the tree by taking care of it, making sure that there are no pests bothering it, building the soil around it with compost, that sort of thing. As I wrote the story, of course, I made a few sly references to Silverstein's work. A lot of people have complained that the relationship between the little boy and the tree is really unhealthy. It's a codependent one. So I have Poe make a comment that Trees are terrible at setting boundaries unless you chop them down and use their wood to make a fence. Seemed appropriate. My favorite scene in the story comes when Sheldon comes to chop down Pome's tree so he can use it to make his boat. It's a brutal scene because Pome's literally begging for her life, and Sheldon is heedless to the meaning of what he's doing and why she's so desperate to stop him. The story ends when the old Sheldon arrives in Pome's glade. He's finally learned the lessons Pome taught him when he was younger, and he's come to atone for what he did. Now, throughout the story, Pome kept referring to her friend Brooke. Brooke, as you may have guessed it, if you're familiar with Greek myth, is a naiad. That's the spirit of the water. The final scene of the play, the final scene of the story, these two finally meet, Brooke and Sheldon. And as Brooke makes her stream overflow its banks, Sheldon finally pays the price for environmental destruction he's caused. It's not a happy story, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a warning about what happens when we disregard the well-being of the forest, when we are careless with the environment, when we just consume recklessly and don't care for the earth around us. So in that sense, it's the bit of the indigenous justice that we've talked about because it stresses the interconnectedness of all things of humans with the environment. I've written a lot over the years. Most of it's been news articles and editorials for the newspapers I've been an editor of. I did run a website, Original Humor, about 20 years ago called brothersgrin.com, and I've also shared a few short horror stories with friends. And I have a complete first draft of the fantasy novel that I need to revise. But this is the first piece of fiction of this length I've written in years, and right now I'm trying to find a publisher who will print it, probably in a magazine or some other periodical. If that fails, I'll probably just sell it on Kindle, sell it for a download to the Kindle. You know what I'm trying to say. As I work and complete some other works for publication, and maybe I'll compile them and try shopping that around. I'm proud of the way the story has turned out. I'm hoping it finds an audience with at least a few people who are receptive to its environmental message. With any luck, someone out there will get the lesson that Pome tried to give Sheldon before it gets to be too late for more of us. And now I'm going to read you an excerpt from the story.